Hi. In today's lesson in TTED 5060 at British Columbia Institute of Technology, we're going to be using the Boombot to create some really neat high quality sounds. And to do that, we're going to be using this little chip right here, module I guess is the better name. It's called the DFPlayer Mini. Let me see if I can get that to focus right there for me, the DFPlayer Mini. And it's a neat little MP3 player module. Plays WAV files as well as MP3 files, and it's just a couple of chips bolted on there, and it's got an micro SD card slot on the back. So you're going to need a micro SD card, and I think anything under 32 gigabytes is pretty good, and you're going to have to put it in here. Now there's some tricks to formatting that micro SD card that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, because if you don't do it just right, the sounds don't come out there. But this board's been specifically designed to, well, the circuit's been specifically designed to work with this board. And if you plug it in right there, it should work just fine once we get a bit of software running on it. A couple of things to note. That a lot of the pins on here are designed for 3.3 volt communication. So just be a little bit careful if you're doing this on your own. Read the specs and make sure you hook it up properly. Okay, so the DFPlayer Mini is hooked up right in here. It's got a micro SD card in it, and we're going to talk about how to format the files and put them onto your micro SD card. And the other thing we need on your robot is we need to pop it open, and there's space right down inside here for a nice little flat, I think it's at about a 2-inch speaker or something like that. Anyways, it sits down there nice and easily. There we go. You can see it's just a nice flat little speaker that tucks out of the way, and a short length of wire that comes out the back and around. And I've ran this right underneath my Arduino right here. You can see it comes around this way, tucks through underneath the Arduino, and comes up right here to plug in next to the DFPlayer Mini. Not my best piece of routing on the board. That would have been really nice to put that header right down here at the back somewhere. But at the time I was building this, I didn't actually know where the speaker was going to go. So it was a little bit exciting to get all that figured out. Anyway, it seems to fit in there just fine. And it doesn't matter whether you've got red and black or black and red. The polarity doesn't really matter that much for a little speaker like this. And you can mount it all in there. And well, I'll leave this up for right now. You can turn on your robot, and when it boots up, oh, did you hear that? On boot up, you can get your robot to start talking to you. And it can make any number of sounds, and you can get your sounds from a number of sources. I'm going to show you how to get some of your own sound design into there, but certainly you can go online and use other sources for inspiration, starting point, whatever you want. Let's show you exactly what we're going to be doing this as we get going through here today. And I'm just going to come in here and let's see, I got to get connected to the Boombot network. And there always seems to be one more button to push than is really necessary to get this hooked up. Connecting to the Boombot network and running RemoteXY and connecting to Boombot on here. So what I've added, last time we looked at this, we slowed down the ESP8266 to 9600 bits per second. And for reasons I'll get into today, that's actually a good thing that we did it. We're going to leave it slowed down, and that's going to help this all end up working. And screen's being a little bit helpful there. I've added a select set of buttons right on here so that I can select the sound that I want, and then I can press play. Oh, there we go. I've got set it up so it only plays one sound every 5 seconds. We'll talk about why it does that a little bit later on. And we're able to do that all while maintaining our control over the NeoPixels and over the drive motors. And the Canon. Oh, maybe we should add some Canon specific sound effects. So Let's take a look at how we're going to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about where you can get some sound effects from. Okay, so micro SD card is going to need some sounds on it. So basically, we're looking for sounds in either .wav, a wave, or .mp3 format. And you can find lots of free sound effect websites online. This is one right here called freesound.org. And you can go in there. There'll be dozens and dozens of sounds on these sites. You come in and take a look around. Some of them ask you to sign up for an account to download the files or maybe make a donation. I'll leave that up to you, but go ahead and take a look and find what you think is interesting in there. They've got various sound packs, and you should be able to click on something and deer barking. That's not very, yeah, that's not very loud. Forest singing. Okay, so you've got the sound effects coming through right in there. So you can use a pre-made sound effect as a starting point. You can take a sound or you can record some of your own. And that's what I'm going to talk about right now is my favorite, and I've been using it for ages, sound editor is open source and it's called Audacity. And right on here, you can see I've got a little sound clip and it might sound familiar.
You're in my way.
Okay, so where does that come from? Well, it's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to delete that to start a new file in here. And make sure you've got a nice, clean sound source to start with. And what should we prepare to fire? Okay, locked on target. That would be a good one to have on my Boombot. Okay, so let's come in here and let's record locked on target. Okay, now you've recorded it. You can see the little peaks right in there. You can listen to it. Locked on target. And then you can come in here and you can delete the parts that you don't want. Okay, and locked on target. There we go. Okay, now there's all sorts of effects right in here, and I have no idea what the auto duck sound effect is. Anyway, you can go around and play with that. If it came through a little quiet, you can amplify it. You can play with the bass and the treble amplification. You can change the pitch. Okay, it says choose the audio. I'm going to choose this segment of audio right in here. And you could do it for part of it if you wanted, change pitch. And I'm going to make it a little deeper.
Locked on target.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll make it locked on target.
Locked on target.
I'm going to cancel that. Maybe I want it to go a little bit faster. Anyways, you can come in here and you can change the speed without changing the pitch. Speed multiplier 1.4.
Locked on target.
Okay. Ooh, that sound.
Locked on target.
Too fast.
Locked on target.
Okay, and then maybe I'll, let's see, change that pitch down a little bit. Oh, didn't mean to press OK.
Locked on target.
Oh, let's undo that. Anyways, you can come in here and you can play around with quite a few things on here. I tend to like to change the speed, change the pitch. We're going to drop that down a little bit, percent change, minus.
Locked on target.
Locked on target. Locked on target. Locked on target. Oh, there we go. And then I'm going to add some reverb to that just because I can. And there's a reverb filter on here and locked on target. And you can play around with the room size on here. Locked on target. So anyways, you can play around with that. And if you're interested in creating your own sound effects, of course, you can find various sounds that you can start with. And there's all sorts of neat things that you can do to become a Foley artist, and you may find that one of your students out there falls in love with this one particular part of the project and goes on to, make it big in the movie industry. Who knows? It's pretty cool, but you can then save this file and
Locked on target.
yeah, that's not bad. And you just come in here and export it as an MP3 and have a folder on your computer ready to go. And when you save the file, okay, there is a format that you need to save the MP3 file to. And start out by going 000, or if you're greater than 10, it would be 001, whatever the number is. You can see here I've got 4 and 5 on here. I'm going to go 006 dot MP3, and I better give it a name. This is locked on target. Okay, so now that is saved onto your drive. And what you want to do is you want to have all your files named and numbered onto your drive. And it's worth, that was the other thing I meant to add to the end of that. That's 1.4 seconds long. It would have been worth putting a note at the end, not 1.4, because the dot in your file name is significant, maybe 1_4 to indicate that this sound effect is 1.4 seconds long, so that when you're looking at it later and you're trying to make sure that your sound effects don't overlap with each other, you know how long the sound effect is going to be. Okay, so now you've got that set up, and it's time to get your MP3 card or your MP3 files on to your little micro SD card. And my computer has a micro SD port on it. You can also get flash drives that accept a micro SD and all sorts of adapters right there. So you can take that, and this one just plugs in right here, and I can plug it into a standard SD port that I have on the side of my computers. My computer, quite a few laptops have them, and my desktop happens to have one as well. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so now I've got those files saved, and what I need to do is I need to format that micro SD card. If you're running into problems formatting micro SD cards, Google format micro SD, and it should take you to a website called sdcard.org, and there is an SD memory card formatter right here. This is a piece of software that you'll download onto your system, and this will do a low-level format of any micro SD card you put in there, and that's a great way to completely clear out your micro SD card. For micro SD cards that have already been formatted into the FAT32 file format, okay, it may ask you what file format you want, and we want FAT32. You can come in here, and we are going to reformat that again. There's my file with some of my open source or some of my homemade sound effects. And I'm going to come in here right now, open up File Explorer as well. And I'm going to find my micro SD card wherever it's plugged into the system right here. And DFPlayer 2. You see I've got a folder in it called micro MP3 right now. We'll put that in just a minute. I'm just going to show you. Come right in here and format your micro SD card. Make sure you get your micro SD card, not your C drive, okay? And to FAT32, and in this case, I'm just going to call it DFPlayer 2, okay? And a quick format is fine. It's going to erase all the data on there, which is just fine. A full format, if you need to do it, is going to take a little while, so allow a little bit of time if you got to do a full format depending on the size, but a quick format will usually do it. If the quick format doesn't work for you, do a full format, and if that doesn't work, go and download that SD card formatter and do it from there, because you do need a freshly formatted micro SD card to make this work based on what I've been able to read and figure out about making it all come together. So let's come in right here. And let's take a look inside that DFPlayer mini file. And where are we right in here? DFPlayer 2. And inside there, you are going to create a new folder called MP3. and you're going to go into that MP3 folder, and you're going to be able to copy some of these sounds. Now, here's the catch. It's weird. I don't quite know what's going on with all the file format things in here. If you want to make a change to any of these file names, you need to do it now. So for instance, I'm getting rid of some of the old sound effects that I had on there. I'm putting this as 001, and I'm editing them while they're still in the folder that's on my computer. 002 and 003. Okay, you might be able to do a 000 on there as well. So when you've got the files set up in there, and like I said, I was going to change locked on target to have, that was 1.4 seconds, so I just make that mark in there. That's not necessary, that's a note to myself more than anything. Okay, now that I've got those all hooked up right there, I can take those three sounds and I can copy them, keep an original copy on here, and I'm going to paste them into the MP3 folder on my DFPlayer Mini. And yes, we're going to copy it without its properties. That doesn't really matter. And so now I've got these sounds on here. And what matters is that you don't edit them on the micro SD card. Okay, you do all your editing over here, and then you copy everything over. And if you decide to erase something or delete something on here, go back and reformat the micro SD card. If you do that, I've had good luck getting this to work with everything that we're doing here. Okay, so there we go. That's on there. And now I can close this window, and you can either eject the micro SD card, or in my case, I'm feeling bold. I'm just going to pull it out of the system and take that micro SD card out right over here, pop it in, turn on your robot, and it boots up. I have to reconnect to the network. And okay, let's see right in here. Oh, I tried to play sound 0, I think. Okay. And oh, something glitched up on there. And let's see right here. Ooh, that sounds pretty good. Ooh, I'm getting some kind of error in there interfering with my RemoteXY connection. We'll worry about that in just a minute. Clearly, I've changed something up. Anyway, that's hooked up and running right on there. Seems to be running fairly nice, aside from that occasional glitch that is not in the script for this video. And so we'll carry on with the script for this video and talk about the software that we're going to put in there to make this work. So to integrate that with the RemoteXY controls, we've added a few things to the RemoteXY screen. And you'll see right here, I've got a slider right down here. And didn't want to edit that. I'll be able to move that around. And the slider is going to hopefully let me control volume. I've got a select range right in here, and you can change the, no, it's underneath the edge of the screen here. Let me shrink that down. You can change the number of positions. So I said 6, so this can handle 6 different sound effects via remote control. But you could have more sound effects than that. The 6th one could just be a random one if you wanted it to be. All sorts of different things you can do. You can have a random sound on startup if you've got lots of different sounds. You could have it read out status reports on your battery, and you could have an MP3 file that says the battery is, And then depending on the state of the battery, you could read the analog pin that the battery is hooked up to, and you could say, good, okay, or bad. Um, so you can play around with the sound effects quite a bit and get pretty creative to give you status reports. Just to give you an idea, this chip was sort of designed with automotive applications in mind, which is why there's hundreds of thousands of them out there. And I actually don't know if it's one of the chips that's causing the big slowdown in auto manufacturing right now due to a shortage of chips, but it could be something like this is what they're waiting for to make a car, because the car is supposed to play a pleasant chime sound, and they have the MP3 of the chime sound that they want to put on here and play the sound. Anyway, the idea is that you can put all sorts of different sounds onto an SD card and then play the ones you want to when you need to play them. And we're going to have a select button right here and then a play, so we can select the sound we want, then we can press play, and hopefully we might even get the slider to control the volume for us. If you're looking for more information on the DFPlayer Mini, it's made by a company called DFRobot, or at least it's sold by a company called DFRobot. I don't know who makes the actual chip itself. Anyway, and you can go to https wiki.dfrobot.com/dfplayermini, and then it's got their SKU number right on there. So you can find that through Google, or you can just type it in. But anyways, this has a whole bunch of information on the DFPlayer Mini and the applications for it, the pin map, so you don't have to use it with an Arduino. Like I say, we use it as a sound source in our TTED 4060 course when we're building color organs and amplifiers and things like that. It's got some information if you want to try writing your own controls for controlling it over the serial port. It's not actually all that hard. You can hook switches up to it individually. It's got connection diagram on here, and it's got some sample code for running on your Arduino to control the DFPlayer Mini. And we're going to use some of the sample code here to get us started. Okay, now the first thing you'll notice is that it's got a hashtag include dfrobot dfplayermini.h, and that means you're going to need that library installed on your system. So pop open your Windows software, and I'm a step ahead of myself. You've done this before for a number of things now. Come into your library manager, so you're managing libraries, and then come in right here and just do a search for DFRobot, and they'll have multiple things installed, right? Or they'll have multiple things available. But if you do a search for DFRobot and come down here, you will find DFRobot, DFPlayer Mini Library. Okay, my system, it's installed. I've got 1.05, which is the latest. You'll have a little button on yours that says, go ahead and install it. Okay, and when you've installed that, you should see in your example folder, you should see the way down here, DFPlayer Robot, DFPlayer Mini Library. You can see I also played around with a different library. Different people have different libraries for driving a lot of these devices, but I've stuck with this one. And I've just come in here and picked up the Get Started function. And here we are for Get Started. And this is a way that you can, once you've got some sounds onto your DFPlayer Mini, you can hook that up and give it a try. Now you do need to change a couple of settings in here. It is going to use softwareSerial, so you need to make sure that you're using the right pins to communicate with your DFPlayer Mini. Now you can look at the schematic for this, or written right underneath it on there. I think I've written that we are using D13 to transmit to the DFPlayer Mini, and actually you can see it tucked away right down in underneath here. And I'm not quite sure why I felt obliged to put it underneath instead of somewhere where you could see it, but at least you can still see it. Data is coming into the DFPlayer Mini on pin 13, and it can actually go back and talk to your computer, to your Arduino on pin 12. Now those pins are duplexed, and they're used for your lights as well. So we're running out of pins. They had to do multiple things, and anyway, that's fine. So your RX pin is going to be receiving from the DFPlayer Mini, and that one is on the DFPlayer Mini, therefore that's the transmit one. That is going to be 12, and your transmit pin going to the DFPlayer Mini should be on 13. Okay, and now I ran into some problems running this software. Let's see what happens if I go ahead and upload that to my Boombot. Will it play anything for me? Oh, helps if I come along here and plug this cable in here. It's amazing how much faster the programming goes. Oh, there we go. Did work, but it's really, really quiet. Okay, so I heard a little bit of sound come out there. I don't know if you did. Let's take a look in here and see what we're doing in here. As the software runs, it's got some include files up at the beginning, and we're using something called softwareSerial. We spent a little bit of time talking about the hardware serial port, okay, and the pins that we use to go from the hardware serial, pins 0 and 1, to our ESP8266. The last time we did anything with the robot here, and we took a look at how we slowed the ESP8266 down to 9600 bits per second. This is actually a pretty good thing because the DFPlayer Mini talks at 9600 bits per second, and if you try to run your hardware serial port any faster than you run your software serial port, then you start to run into some more of those interrupt timing glitches. So having this hooked up at 9600 bits per second works perfectly fine with the 9600 BPS default signal that we've got running right there. Now, software serial just means that the Arduino CPU figures out how to send that serial data signal by turning pins on and off. Okay, much like we use the CPU to figure out how to send the data to our NeoPixels, our WS2812B strip over here, we're going to use the CPU to figure out how to send data down here, and therefore we can send it down any pin that we want. Okay, so let's see, we come down here, we set up the software serial, and this has a bunch of other things installed to talk to it and make sure that it's working, and it's, it gives you instructions on your software display to put things in here. Now, right now, that's only playing at volume 10. Let's bump that up to 30, and that's going to play the first available track on there. And then it's got a whole bunch of other things in here that the library can do that cycles through and plays things. Anyway, your volume goes from 0 to 30. I'm going to play these back at full volume. Okay, there we go. And it's going to keep doing that and doing that and doing that. My wife's sitting right over there, so I have to power it down right now because I like having a wife. Uh, oh yes, she could start shopping for flamenco gear. That's another way to bring things to my attention. Okay, so now we've got this software sitting right here, and like I say, using the library is a good way to start testing things out. And let's take a look at how we're going to integrate this into our Arduino code. Let's see. Here we go. So I'm starting with where we left off last time. We've got some tabs going on right here, okay? We talked about how the tabs are going to work, and it lets us have our code a little bit easier to read. And when we finish off a function and it's working well, we can stuff it away and make sure that it's easy to read. I'm just going to, speaking of easy to read, going to clean some of these up so you can see what we're doing right here. And this is the code that's going to have our drive function, our rangefinder function, our update LED function all tucked in here. And this is our main code for for running the Boombot. Now, in order to make it work, we do need to include some more software. Okay, we need to include these two pieces of code right here. You'll notice that they've got them right here in our Get Started sketch. So you can take softwareSerial.h, DF Robot Player Mini, so these two libraries that we're going to use, and just pop them in right here. Okay, then we take the softwareSerial command. Remember that we were talking on pins 12 and 13, and go ahead and pop that in right there. So just copy and paste that into your code. Then we're going to take the object creation right here and DF Robot, DF Player Mini, my DF Player. So what this means is just like we named our LED strip, okay, we gave it a name, we can give the SP826 a name, whatever. In here, we're giving a DF Player the name of my DF Player. If you had more than one DF Player hooked up, you could maybe hook them up on multiple softwareSerial ports. Okay, so that's some of the configuration that we need to set up for our for running our DF player. Now, the rest of the stuff that you see in here, this is all for setting up our RemoteXY. Now, I've come through and I've played around to get a new configuration of RemoteXY, and this section right here, all in yellow, this is what describes what you see on the cell phone screen when you're running RemoteXY. So if you've changed your design on the RemoteXY website, you'll have to copy that code in right here, paying attention to your squiggly brackets and semicolon down at the end, because sometimes those get forgotten when you're doing your copying. Okay, the other thing that I've added in right here is I added a slider. Okay, and so slider 1, when I pull down that code from the RemoteXY website, there's a slider 1 function in there. And there's also a select 1 function. Okay, and so if I select position A, it's going to give me the number 0. Alrighty, so that's in there. Button 2 is in here now. Okay, I had button 1 as my fire button. Button 2 is going to be my play button for playing the sound. Again, your results are going to be a little bit different, and hopefully as we've been going through this, you're getting a little more confident with interpreting your own code. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things that I've done and then let you poke around and try a few different things on your own for figuring out the rest, okay? Let's come down here and take a look. Here we set up our RemoteXY. Here we set up our LEDs. This is all stuff from the previous video. This stuff comes from quite a while ago, and I've added a variable in here, an unsigned long called last sound, just because I don't want to make my sounds happen too often. Okay, so now in setup, okay, there's a few things that our sample code does in setup, and you'll see there's a mySoftwareSerial.begin. Okay, now back up here at the beginning, let me come up right here where we did softwareSerial. You'll see, remember that I called my softwareSerial port mySoftwareSerial. Again, this is an example. You could call it Bob if you wanted. The computer doesn't care that you call it mySoftwareSerial. It just cares that it has a distinct name. Calling it mySoftwareSerial, it's a bit lengthy, but we understand it's got to be in there. So this has to be in here when you do your setup. You have to initialize mySoftwareSerial, and this is just like serial begin if you're writing out the hardware port, but in this case, it's mySoftwareSerial begin. And now you have to start the DFPlayer mini object. So we called that myDFPlayer. So myDFPlayer.begin. And then you tell it that you're going to be using the mySoftwareSerial object to handle your communication. So that's what's coming through right in there. And then right in here, I send it a command of volume 30. Now, that command seems to get through just fine. And I shouldn't tell it to play 5, because right now I've only got 3 pieces on there. So I'm going to play track number 1. Alrighty. So my DFPlayer.play is, you'll see it right down in here. And to play the first MP3 on the track, well, there you go, my DFPlayer.play1. So that's all in setup, and that takes care of pretty much everything that you need in setup. Now, down in my loop, what I've got in here is, you'll recall I did a check so that I only updated my LEDs every 100 milliseconds, and we can do something similar like that for our sounds. We'll come down here, and after I've handled the joystick and the driving and everything, I've just kind of tacked this on at the end right here. Okay, here's the section where I actually play the sounds. So right at the end of the RemoteXY statements, I've got this little section in here. And I come in here and I take a look, and remember I set RemoteXY button 2 as the play button. So that button, when it's pressed, will equal 1. But I also want to check and make sure that I'm not trying to play one sound before the other one finishes, because otherwise you just get a whole bunch of play, 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 play messages going down there, and it jams up the softwareSerial port and just does, anyway. We want to give it a break. We don't need to probably give it a 5 millisecond break, or sorry, 5,000 millisecond break. That's 5 seconds in between sounds. But again, I'm taking pity on those around me. So I've limited myself so that I can't play a sound any more than once every 5 seconds. In a more sophisticated way, you notice how I was keeping track of timing and how long each sound was. I could say, well, if I've played this sound, then I need to wait this many seconds. And if I've played this sound, then I need to wait this many seconds before I can play again. The DFPlayer Mini actually does have a busy pin on it. So we could, if we had a spare pin on the Arduino, listen to the DFPlayer Mini's busy pin, and it would tell us when it's finished playing a sound. Okay, now right in here, I've commented out my volume statement right in here. This was intended to work with the slider, and for some reason it wasn't working that well for me. So I just put a volume of 10 right in here. You can play around with a statement like that, uncomment it, put it into your section right here. You'll notice this section right in here is all surrounded by squiggly brackets right here, ellipses, control. All of this section in yellow is controlled by this condition right here, namely that the play button is pressed and that it's been 5,000 milliseconds since last sound was played. Okay, so I set the volume, and then I say my DFPlayer.play, and now I look inside RemoteXY select, and I take a look in there to get a value. And I think one of the reasons I may have been having a glitch in there is because that value starts at 0, and I don't have a 0 soundtrack on my MP3 file. So now, if I go in there and I take a look at this, this will return a value from 0 to 6. 0 to 6 or 0 to 5? 0 to 5, I guess, because there's 6 different values. This will take a look at that, and by adding 1 to it, I'll renumber that to be 1 through 6 instead of 0 through 5. Okay, and then because I've just played a sound, I remember that the last sound is equal to millis, and I shut it down right there. Okay, let's see what happens if I go ahead and upload that code. If I plug in my programming port and upload that code. That was our startup sound, came through and played right there. And let's connect our Connections. Okay. And now, when I'm in the A position, that should transmit 0 back to the computer. Because I take that 0 and add 1, I should play sound number 1. There we go. I'm a Boombot. If I select B and press play, oh, maybe it wasn't 5 seconds. I'm in your way. And if I play C, okay, that will transmit as 012, but it will actually play the file number 003 if I wait 5 seconds and press it properly. And that seems to be getting rid of some of the glitching that was happening earlier that wasn't part of my script. Now, you can add all sorts of different sounds on there. You could have entire pieces of music and symphonies recorded on this micro SD card. It can handle something like 32 hours of music. Okay, so don't think that you're going to run out of space to put your MP3 files and sound effects for your Boombot on there. You're going to have plenty of ability to make it say everything you want it to say. And like I say, right in here, I'm accessing this by using the RemoteXY buttons. You don't have to do it by that. You can have it accessed by your rangefinder. So when your rangefinder sees something getting really close to it, your rangefinder function can send a command down over the softwareSerial port to say, "You're in my way." And then you can add a whole bunch of other functions. So when you're doing your line following, you can have it sitting there and you can have it going, "Oh my goodness, I'm lost, I'm lost." Or anyways, all sorts of creative functions that you can do. I just think it's cool that we can put a sound on there. You know, you can add a laser blaster sound onto it so that when you're, oh, this works better if I give it some battery power and if I'm plugged in. So when you're going bang, 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 there's no reason it can't be going pew, 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 pew using laser blaster sounds like that. You know, you can sit in there and say, and the flying discs begin. All right, folks, there we go. It should be a fairly simple add-on to pump some sound up there and pop your DFPlayer Mini in there and make your robot make some noise. If you wanted, you could tie it into these buttons right here, which means that would work with these buttons right here too. You know, it's just a matter of you understanding your inputs and figuring out what you want to do with them. Making it play sound is not that big of a deal. Just remember to format the SD card, put your sounds into a folder called MP3, and don't edit the names while they're on the SD card. Get all your files neatly arranged on your computer and then copy everything over all at once and don't touch the SD card after that. You can add files to it. Just don't go back and try editing them. It seems to mess up something in the file structure that the DFPlayer Mini doesn't like. All right, I think we're almost done. We've got a couple things left here on the Boombot that we're going to be able to do. And one of those is to pull out the rangefinder and power up our I2C ports right on here. And that's going to enable us to put a couple of additional sensors on here, as well as possibly a video screen. So we'll be able to see some real-time output on the robot. If you get that working, I hope you have some fun with the sound effects, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it.